Progressive Alliance. And I would like to welcome all of you that have joined us tonight. We have a wonderful program called Defending Florida Public Schools, Black History, Discipline, Privacy, Funding, Books. There are many issues that have been discussed recently, but it's important to put it all into context and to understand what's really happening. Why is it that schools and education have become such a big issue in our community, in our schools lately? We have two wonderful speakers on a panel tonight to help explore these issues. We also have a couple of VIP guests who are going to be talking a little bit later, and we have a surprise guest who's going to be dropping in on us around 7 o'clock, I believe. But our panel is going to be the prime driver tonight. We're going to be looking at these important issues of education. Now, we know that when Florida was settled as a state, they struggled initially with how to provide a free public education to every child. Today, we know that our state, our elected leaders have that obligation to provide high quality public education for every child in our state. And frankly, some of the things that have been coming out of our legislature have been shocking us. The issues of banning books, the issues of attacking LGBTQ kids. These issues are frankly shocking, and it is, watching what happened at the heart of the pandemic with issues like trying to protect children. By the way, I'm going to ask everybody to please mute yourselves. If you're not already muted, please mute yourself so that we don't have folks coming up with unnecessary background sound for us. And anyway, so we've got these very, very important issues that we need to explore and we need to understand. Our two panelists tonight, Patty Farley, old friend of the Space Coast Progressive Alliance, retired Mel High teacher, past president and current board member of the Democratic Women's Club of Florida, where she also served as first vice president, regional chair, convention chair, labor chair. She's also the president of the Democratic Labor Caucus of Florida, secretary of the Space Coast Labor Council, where she's represented teachers for many years. She's also involved in the ERA and bringing it back in. In fact, she may be able to talk a little bit about that as well. The Equal Rights Amendment, of course, is something that is actually still alive in our nation, and we hope to have that passed so that all women get equal representation to men in our country. Jennifer Jenkins, our other panelist, she's a Brevard Public Schools board member and frankly, a heroic board member. She's a licensed speech language pathologist. She's worked in public schools for 6 years. She taught elementary pre-K students. Her husband is a teacher. She's got a child that's going to hopefully be in our public school system soon. And Jennifer you're going to love her as much as I do, a real hero in our community who has stood up to fight for the safety, health, and efficacy of our children, of our school teaching programs. We have a couple of VIP guests. We'll be talking about those a little bit later. And what I'd like to do right now is take care of a little bit of business that we like to do at the beginning of every SCPA meeting. And I'm going to look for our president, Karen Houston, and ask her to take the floor. Karen Houston, you have
Thank
the floor.
you, Phil.
You're welcome.
I just want to say good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to SCPA's event this evening. Thank you for coming out. And I just want you to know, as the new president, I'm very humbled. I'm very, very humbled to be serving as your president. And I want you to understand that we will continue to bring you, we're committed to continue to bring you insightful, important, timely information for you and for you to share within the community. Because if you don't share it within the community, we just preaching to the choir. So I just want to say thank you for being here tonight. Thank you to our APC people. That's the Action Projects Committee who put these events together. Thank you, Vicki, for putting this one together. And thank you for everyone that shares in, does everything to make these programs successful. Thank you, Phil, for always being here for us. So I just want you to know that you can always check us out at scpaflorida.com. And our next event will be Protecting Clean Water. That'll be Thursday, April 6th. And we hope to that you all come and share this. We got to leave clean water for our children and our grandchildren and so on and so forth. So right now I'm going to turn it over to our treasurer, Carol Becker, so she can give you a little more information about how to be a member.
All right. Hi, everybody. Ways to become a member. You can go to the website, as Karen mentioned, scpaflorida.com. And there's a way on there that you can use your credit card to join. Family memberships are $35. Individual memberships are $25 and student memberships are $10. If you'd rather use a check, you can mail a check to SCPA at P.O. Box 412, Melbourne, Florida, 32902.
Thank you, Carol. And I also want to say, this program, pardon my screen, it's been kind of crazy lately. But this program is very important. Every person, every living person here within Florida should be included in whatever decisions are made in Tallahassee. So it's up to us. We have to be the ones that reach out to our elected officials and let them know how we feel about certain things. I'm so thankful for the people that we have here today to help us understand what's going on with our schools and the horrible things that's happening. Action items, those will be shared by our panelists tonight. And so we want you to listen to what they have to say and take action. These people are out there on the forefront every day working hard. Just them being here is really an honor, because everyone that's on this panel is a hard worker within the community. So we're asking you to please take note of whether the action items are, and take action, not just take note, but take action. So I'm going to hand it back to Phil. Thank you all once again.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Karen. And again, we thank you for serving us as president. We really do appreciate that. Karen has a long history with the Space Coast Progressive Alliance. She's most recently served us as our vice president for a few years. She's been on our board and has been a hard worker for the Space Coast Progressive Alliance. And so it's wonderful to have you as our president. Hey, one of the things we always like to give the community the opportunity to speak up. If you have any announcements, if you're a member of a community organization or you know of some community activities, I ask you to please raise your hand. You could do that electronically here on Zoom, a couple of different ways, depending on whether you're using a computer or a phone or an iPad. There's a little button. If you look for it, it says reactions, and you click reactions and it'll have a little hand raise. And if you click your hand, we can recognize you, give you a minute to announce whatever community activities there are that are active and that are going on that we would like to share with our progressive community. So I'm looking for people to do that. What I can do is I can very quickly announce that again, as Karen mentioned, we're going to be doing an event next month about clean water. And I think it's important that we mention the fact that the Florida Right to Clean Water campaign is collecting petitions right now in order to get an amendment to the Florida State Constitution to guarantee the right for clean water, to put some teeth into legislation that actually would demand and provide clean water for every citizen of our state. We'll be discussing this next month, but right now, if you haven't signed that petition, please find a way to look for it. Again, it's Florida Right to Clean Water. You could Google that and it'll take you right there. You can find their petition, sign it, get it to them. We'll be talking more about that next month, but I think that that's an organization that needs to be mentioned. I see Suzanne Taylor is here, from a friend from the League of Women Voters. It is wonderful to have you, Suzanne. Please unmute yourself and you have the floor.
Thank you. Just very quickly. Hi, everybody. I just wanted to let everyone know that our next monthly meeting is Thursday, March 9th, starting at 5 p.m. for social hour, 6 p.m. for the meeting. We're going to have the Supervisor of Elections, Tim Bobanek, speaking. So we hope to see a lot of people there. There's a flyer on our website to give you more information. Anyone who knows a league member can always reach out to them for information. It's open to the public. Thanks very much. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you so much. And we really, really appreciate your work, making sure that everyone has a right to vote and our democracy works for all citizens. For those of you that are regular SCPA members, you may remember Tim Bobanek. Tim has been at a couple of SCPA meetings over the years. He actually ran a straw poll for us a few years ago. I believe he spoke to us on as a member of one of our panels. So certainly, Tim, you will recognize from the Supervisor of Elections Office. And I see we have Larry Abdullah's got his hand raised. Larry, if you could unmute yourself, you have the floor.
Yes, I just wanted to say that Jennifer is going to be at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Brevard, which is the one just south of 192, April 2nd at 11 a.m. She's going to talk at our service, and that's the one off just east of Wickham and just south of 192, Unitarian Universalist Church of Brevard.
Thank you, Larry. And again, the date and the time one more time, please.
April 2nd, 11 a.m.
April 2nd at 11 a.m.
And we are in person and Zoom, so we're hybrid. So I probably would go in person, and Jennifer could go either way, which I meant anyway. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Larry. Does anyone else have any community announcements? I don't see any hands raised. Again, if you have a community announcement, this is your big chance to hit the reactions button on your device. Vicky Impoko, she's got her hands up. Vicky, thank you so much for helping organize this event tonight, and you have the floor.
Certainly. Well, I don't see anyone on here from Awake Brevard. Just wanted to mention that there is another demonstration at the school board meeting on March 7th from 4:30 to 6:30 p.m. Don't Jail Our Schools rally. So it should be interesting. There's some street theater planned, and be there and stand up for our children and Jennifer at the school board meeting. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah. Hey, Vicky, this is Dan. There are about
Oh.
3 or 4 people from Awake Brevard. So thanks for mentioning.
Well, nobody raised their hand, so.
No. So thank you.
Is there
Okay.
anyone else from Awake Brevard that would like to fill in more details on that event? I don't see that yet, but that's excellent to know. So going to the school board meetings is very important. Frankly, I haven't been to one during the pandemic, and frankly, I'm just getting over COVID myself. But the reality is that presence at these meetings is very important. The members of the board, the members of the if you go to a county board meeting, they take note of who comes and who doesn't. They know who's writing them letters. They know who's calling them on the phone and who's making comments. It's very, very important. And remember, everybody, please to mute yourself so that you don't jump in unnecessarily. And I don't think we've got any other community announcements, so I'm going to proceed. And I would like to remind our panelists that we are always looking for action items. If you can think, or this is to both Patty and to Jennifer, of something that you would like our audience to actually do when we're done with our presentation. If you could have something for them to physically do and encourage our members to do something that you know, other than just learning for themselves, we really appreciate that. So we'll be talking about that later. And I would like to remind everybody that we've got a special program tonight called Defending Florida Public Schools. If you've just joined us, we have 2 wonderful speakers on our panel. We're going to hopefully have a guest speaker who's going to be dropping in. Again, this is just for folks that haven't joined us tonight. A quick reminder. Let's see. Let me start introducing Patty Farley. Again, is a retired Mel High teacher, past president, and current board member of the Democratic Women's Club of Florida, where she also served as first vice president. regional chair, convention chair, and labor chair. She's the president of the Democratic Labor Caucus of Florida, then the secretary of the Space Coast Labor Council, where she's represented teachers for many years and is now actively involved in work to pass the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment. Patty, you have the floor. Patty, I'm not sure if you have unmuted yourself.
I hadn't, but thank you for reminding me.
You're very welcome.
Okay, stop me if I go too long. On March the 7th, our legislative session starts here in Florida formally. They've been having committee meetings since November. And every day, if you follow the newspaper, something new is come out of Tallahassee that is becoming more and more ridiculous by the day. And unfortunately, a lot of these are aimed at education or the civil rights, which affects our students and teachers. So I concentrated in that area for the information that I'm giving you tonight. But I wanted to start by telling you what they're not going to get. Okay, the title of your program was Defending Students, Defending Education. And I'm going to tell you what our teachers need. And they're not going to get it from this legislature. Okay, but this is what they need. And they need this from both the legislature and our citizens at large. They need for people in general to stop bashing teachers and the staff. They need to empower the teachers and the staff to do their job. People need to be committed to a professional teaching staff, one with credentials and supporting certification and National Board of Education. Somebody's taken over or something, I don't know. We need to reduce standardized testing. We need to reduce a lot of the paperwork. We need to support our public schools with our tax money instead of our voucher schools.
Patty, if I might interrupt you for just a moment, I'm going to remind everyone here to please mute yourselves. And if we can make sure that everybody's muted, then we'll know that we won't have any background noise. We've been getting a little bit of that. Patty, by the way, it appears that your camera might have tilted up a little bit. You may need to tilt your camera down just a hair for us.
Okay, let me see if I can. Is that
Thank
better?
you. That's way better. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. All right. And I was saying we need people to support our public schools. Spend time in the shoes of teachers, volunteer in the schools, encourage teachers that have quit to return, and let's hope that they finally get a raise in pay so that they're not working under poverty conditions. Now, what can the legislative session do to help teachers that they're not going to do? They could fund the schools like they're constitutionally required to do. They could support students' mental health with increasing the number of counselors. They could repeal the 20+ laws that are on the books that have kept teacher pay low. They could put Florida into the top 10 states in teacher pay and academic process instead of the bottom 5. They could give teachers a chance to have their long-term contracts and tenure again. A teacher is fired and given a pink slip at the end of every year. You can't get mortgages. You can't buy things on long-term loans if you don't have a continuing job. We need to support new teachers with mentorship programs and not pay them more than old teachers just to get them in here. Our old teachers that have experience and value need to mentor the young teachers and get adequate pay. We need to prioritize recruiting racial and ethnic minorities as teachers into our schools. We need to support teacher education, and we need to provide financial support for college students. A lot of our state universities in Florida have ended their teacher programs because people were not going into the teacher programs because there's no pay for teachers in the state of Florida. So why would a young person want to become a teacher to be treated so poorly and not even make a minimum wage that will get them out of poverty? So we need to provide support for teachers, increase their pay, have it become a profession that people can be proud to join. We need to eliminate the fees that are required for teacher certification and all the extra classes that teachers need to maintain that certification. For me as a teacher, before I retired, I had to take so many college classes within a certain time period and then pay hundreds of dollars to get my license recertified on those college classes. So I was constantly out money, and I'm sure those fees have raised since I retired. We need to get paraprofessionals into our schools to help teachers, and particularly in our high poverty schools or schools that have a lot of students that need extra help so that they can get that help. And we need to support our neighborhood public schools. Okay, now these are the things that our schools need. And what are we getting from the legislature? This week, we got a bill from the legislature. If you saw it in the newspaper, it's made every day. It makes national news, the bills that DeSantis is putting through our legislature. We have SB 1248, which was introduced by a previous head of the Florida Republican Party, and his goal is the Ultimate Cancel Act is the title of the bill, and it's to cancel the Democratic Party in Florida, so that any Democrat has to re-register, and he's going to do away with the Democratic Party. And this is in response to the idea that there have been bills trying to move some Confederate monuments and whatever. So he has decided that since the Democratic Party was around since the time of the Civil War, that it should also be removed. So he's going to remove the Democratic Party from the state of Florida. Now, this is the kind of things that we're getting up there. A quick summary of some of the bad legislation and some of the things that's going through. It'll be pushed through in the sessions, in the first sessions that happened. DeSantis put through some laws so that he would be covered for his moves on the immigrants, where he sent them to Martha's Vineyard and different places. He allocated funds to make it okay for him to do this, kind of covering up himself. He's passing, there's all kinds of bills coming through that are against trans and gay students. This Don't Say Gay legislation that he put forth last time, they're just expanding it. And it's going, there's 2 or 3 bills going through that's going to prohibit doctors from treating young people. If you treat someone with some of the programs for a trans person, you're going to have to be liable for the rest of their life for being sued and all of that. While on the other hand, there's legislation so that you cannot sue a business if you're damaged by them, or you can't sue insurance companies. So it's just really bizarre. They're changing the death penalty legislation so that it used to be unanimous for someone to be given the death penalty. They're changing it so 8 out of 12 can vote and give someone the death penalty. They're changing the defamation laws. Now, this will go to the Supreme Court, but they are counting on, if it does, they have a Supreme Court in their favor. They want to change the laws that protect journalists so that they can sue journalists for defamation. He's going to have stricter immigration laws, lawsuit limits, school boards. They're attacking school boards again. Jennifer's on tonight. Hopefully she'll talk about this, because I'm sure it's aimed at attacking someone like her, because they are going to force you to put what political party you are on and have a partisan election in the school board, because they feel like, well, they're Republicans, they can control the school board races better. School voucher programs is the biggest thing that we'll talk about tonight, I'm sure. Open carry or permitless carry, the Republicans refer to it as constitutional carry. You'll hear all three phrases given to the idea that he wants to have guns everywhere in the state of Florida. We're going to have term limits for school board members, and they're going to do away on college campuses. If you've seen any of the problems that have come about at New College, diversity and inclusion, education, information, hires, they're doing away with all of this. You go in, they're actually firing people because they were hired under diversity quotas. It is unbelievable what the man is doing, and he has put his cronies in charge of the board, and it is changing so that one small board of people are going to be in charge of hiring university professors throughout the state of Florida. And they're all answer to him. We have all kinds of anti-woke is what they're referring to it as, higher education, doing away with African-American education. They're going to take funding away for different things. Social media, they're going to restrict the use of social media in schools, ban TikTok, but that may be coming from our national government now. The New York Times versus Sullivan ruling is the ruling they're planning on taking to the Supreme Court, being ready for it if it goes. But this is going to allow statements to be published. They can sue all of the press for making anti-statements. It's people are referring to DeSantis as the Pharaoh in Tallahassee because of he's fixing it so anything that he wants he gets, and he's putting down any opposition to him. There is the Universal Voucher Program. Is Senate Bill 202 HB1, and you'll hear about this in the news. And people are arguing that this is a good bill because it will allow voucher programs. In the past started for a good reason. They started to help children that were having problems go to a different school where they could get special assistance. But now the new voucher bill program is set up to allow anybody that wants to just say, hey, I want my tax money back. I want the amount of money that's supposed to go to public schools for my kid. I want it in my pocket. It'll go into a bank account. They do with it what they want. They don't have to prove that they bought books with it. They don't have to prove that they paid tuition with it. You can homeschool your kid. Lori Berman is one of our senators that is really steadfast in helping us on this. Give her support if you can. She brought up in a committee hearing that these people have no controls over what they teach. They can literally be teaching a neo-Nazi program to their children if they've got, and get about $9,000 to $10,000 each for their children that they're keeping home to homeschool their kids with no controls over what they teach them. They don't have to have any recourse. Also, it can be such that, well, I think a lot of people on this call know who Rich Templin is. Okay, Rich Templin is a spokesman for the unions and a college professor, and he's an excellent one to watch. And he got up in a Senate hearing about this bill, and he described it as an opt-out of taxes for rich people. Okay, that's how he said. And if you are rich and don't want to pay your school taxes, you can opt out and just say, I'm not going to pay my taxes, and get the money and use that money to send your kids to private school, even if they're already in private school. You can just say, I'm not paying those taxes. I'm going to use it for something else. We cannot opt out of paying the fire department or paying police taxes or paying for hospitals on our taxes. But yet they're making it so you can opt out and people can get all the money back that would be spent for a child going to public schools. It is estimated that this is going to take at least $4 billion out of the public school budget. Now, there are people that are questioning what's going to happen when all of these kids leave the public schools and we have vacancies. They're going to have to consolidate kids in the schools, and we're going to have empty school buildings, and what's going to happen to those. I think a lot of people are hoping they'll be sold to private businesses, to private schools. Lori Berman raised in the committee hearing, and Tina Polsky, another senator that's on our side on these issues, has commented that we need to keep our public schools open, if for no other reason, because they're hurricane shelters. We cannot give up our public schools because they house our citizens as hurricane shelters. Okay, so, but this issue of giving up our public schools and turning everybody that wants a voucher over to have a voucher, this is going to be a horrible thing. There's another bill.
Patty, you have 3 minutes, and Anna Eskamani has arrived, so wind up.
Okay, well, there's a lot going on with education, and I'll come back at the end and tell you what maybe you can do to help us. And I want to hear from Anna myself. But there is another bill real fast, Bill 256, that's again aimed at teachers and unions. It's going to do away with unions, and so that you can't have the freedom to have union dues deducted from your salary. You have to have 60% of your locals member, but yet you can't discuss unions or have any kind of union literature on the grounds of a school. So this is a union busting bill to bust school unions, and it does not affect policemen and firemen and people that run prisons. Okay.
Well, Patty, I'll tell you what, Patty, thank you so much for that. In fact, we're gonna come back to you after Anna leaves us, and I'll let you close up your presentation, and then we'll proceed. Well, folks, we had mentioned that we might have a surprise guest tonight, and in fact, we do. Anna Eskamani, a good friend of the Space Coast Progressive Alliance. We've had her at a number of events. She is a local hero here in Brevard County. She is a Florida House representative at Florida House District 42 over in Orange County. She has been defending important issues up in Tallahassee for a long time. And actually, she has a very limited amount of time to join us to give us an update on what's going on in her world and what's going on in Tallahassee. Anna, thank you so much for dropping in. Can you hear us okay? Are you, if you can unmute yourself and join us?
Hear you. Fabulous. Yes. Can you hear me okay?
We've got you loud and clear. Thank you, Anna.
Awesome. Thank you, Phil, for your incredible leadership. I'm always so excited when I get to speak to the Space Coast Progressive Alliance. Y'all are amazing. And as Phil mentioned, I have had the honor of sharing space with many of you in person and virtually for years now, for my days working at Planned Parenthood. And then before then, when I was a UCF undergraduate student organizing on my college campus. And indeed, many of your members have known me since I was just a wee little one at UCF. And so I feel like I'm among family when I get to tap in and check in on my Brevard and Space Coast folks. And so, as Phil mentioned, my name is Anna Eskamani, and I'm so excited that I get to speak alongside people like Patricia Farley, who are just labor champions and champions for public education, which I know is the goal of tonight's conversation. And I'm happy to take some questions too, Phil, but I first just want to kind of lay the foundation for what we're seeing in the legislature, and then we can take a moment for some Q&A. And if you notice, I am in my car. I actually just wrapped up a canvas we're promoting an upcoming event we have on Sunday that is virtual, where we'll be basically talking about legislative session in more detail. So if you do want to dive deeper into these conversations, check out our Facebook page Sunday at 8 o'clock. We're going to have a live event and really just go through what's pending, the good, the bad, and the bad. And so with that said, we are preparing for the worst. I mean, this legislative session, in fact, I just heard a rumor that the 6-week abortion ban will be filed tomorrow. Again, that's just a rumor, but we are kind of bracing ourselves for the continued attack on our freedoms and our liberties. And one of that is the targeting of public education, which, to be clear, public education is the ultimate equalizer. These are institutions that help to ensure that no matter how much money you have, what languages you speak, what your religion is, if you have one, what your racial identity is, or sexual orientation or gender identity, that, or if you live with a disability or if you're undocumented, the point of public education is that every person has that equal opportunity to be successful, to learn and grow together and become leaders. That threatens the Republican status quo, which is why we've seen for decades now the continued privatization of public education, efforts to push out teachers and villainize unions. And indeed, the Republican supermajority has taken that up several degrees, not only with a massive privatization bill of K-12 education, which I'm sure Pat talked about, and that is HB1, the major voucher expansion, where basically every child in Florida would get a voucher, and parents will decide whether they go to a public school or a private school that has no accountability metrics. It doesn't have to be accredited. It doesn't have to have certified teachers. And I think what's important to remember too is that private schools get to decide who they accept or not. And so they'll be able to discriminate against kids with disabilities, kids who are LGBTQ+. And of course, no real answer to how this will be funded, with some estimating it could cost anywhere from $2 billion to $4 billion. And that will impact the public education system. At that same note, Patty also mentioned the union busting bill, which is incredibly dangerous. It's actually been a bill that has passed the Florida House at least 4 times in my years of office, but now it's coming back, and we are concerned that because the Senate is now supermajority Republican, that it will have a chance to pass. And this would decimate our public unions, which of course are predominantly led by women and working class people and people of color. And so it's no surprise they carve out police and fire and correctional officers, while allow this to be impacted by teachers, by sanitation workers, and other really important fields that are also very dangerous and sometimes overlooked for their risk of folks fulfilling those jobs, those necessary jobs. And then I want to take a moment just to highlight the attacks on literature, on books, and also higher education. Many folks know that I grew up in Orlando as a daughter of working class immigrants. Public education was my equalizer. I went to public schools in Orange County from kindergarten to 12th grade. And then I went to UCF, and I have 2 degrees through UCF. I have my undergrad, 2 masters, and now I'm getting my PhD. I'm taught at UCF as an adjunct. I care deeply about academics, about academic freedom, about the integrity of our higher institutions. And again, I see these as not just brands that we admire and sports that we watch, but again, really as power building institutions that help young people solve problems and help folks in any generation understand what we have in common that brings us together, to use evidence-based approaches, to not lead with a partisan bias, but to lead with logic, right? And so we're seeing a continuation of book banning. In fact, a new bill has been filed, which is being dubbed the Don't Say Gay, Don't Say Trans 2.0, as it expands the impact of that policy to 8th grade. But then it also includes a new mechanism to ban books, making it even easier for people around the country who don't think we should read books that feature diverse characters, who want to eliminate that, who want to eliminate stories about the Holocaust. It gives them a platform to do that, more than they even have now. And the attacks to higher ed are incredibly devastating and would just destroy our higher ed institutions. I mean, we have to be able to compete at a global scale when it comes to recruiting and retaining the best and brightest students and faculty. House Bill 999 would do the complete opposite. This bill would not only go after something called post-tenure review, which is basically an effort to water down the effect and the prominence of tenure, but it also integrates political propaganda into the curriculum by dictating that coursework must emphasize characters of Western civilization, which is basically code for Christo-fascism. And at the same time, it completely abolishes any DEI program, doesn't think that there should be any conversation on race, and it bans women and gender studies as majors or minors, which is super ironic for me because I actually have a major in women and gender studies. It was an interdisciplinary studies degree. UCF does not actually have a major in women's studies, but I took the women's studies track under the College of Undergraduate Studies. And it's a phenomenal program, but obviously I'm not surprised that Republicans are so scared of women and gender studies majors because I'm one of them. But it's really just devastating the political influence, interference into higher ed. And of course, can also threaten our accreditation. And for those who don't know, accreditation is a really important process that takes place at a national level that impacts our ability as universities and colleges, even private schools, to receive federal financial aid under Title IV programs. So a lot at risk here. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention New College and the fight at New College. I was just at New College again on Tuesday at a rally, speaking with our students and alumni and faculty. I'm helping New College advocates come to Tallahassee, doing everything I can to just amplify how what's happening in New College with the governor's takeover of that board. It really is the canary in the coal mine that this could happen to any university if we don't fight back. And I'm so proud because last week students across the state hosted walkouts. And on last Friday, UCF students went before the Board of Trustees and asked the Board of Trustees to stand with them to support programs like DEI, like multicultural student organizations. And so really proud of students for just, kind of taking the lead on this, because unfortunately, many of our administrators are too scared to. So students, per usual, are saving the day and fighting back in very powerful ways. So I'll step back and see what questions folks have, but just thanks again for the invitation and looking forward to see what's on people's minds.
Anna, we are so proud of you, and we really, really appreciate the insight that you're giving us on what's happening at Tallahassee. Every year when the legislative session happens, we all hold our breath and think, oh my God, is it going to be, how could it get any worse? The answer is it has gotten worse.
Absolutely.
Because it appears that our children are now, and our university students, our teachers, are being held hostage in what appears to be a fake culture war that has been stirred up by our governor who's running for president. And he's doing this. He's written his book now. He's got that out. He's got, I'm sure he's just about to announce that he's running for president. And this appears to be all part of that same thing. The problem is that he appears to be manipulating the legislature, both the House of Representatives and our Senate, to get what he wants. And it's really terrifying. It is a very difficult situation we find ourselves in. What would you say? It sounds like you'd be encouraging our members to join you on this event. This is Sunday, you said.
Yes.
What was it again? Could you give us the time and date, how to get to that?
100%. Well, I want to also just tap into what you just said, right? So there has been a complete consolidation of the legislative branch into the executive branch. And it's very unsettling. It's also reminiscent of what we've seen in dictatorships, what we saw in Nazi Germany as the consolidation of separation of powers began, where all the power was essentially in one man's lap. And that is what is happening in Florida, where the legislature is supposed to be a check and balance to the governor, but has actually done everything for the governor, doesn't question his authority. And this, I can't think of a worse example than the redistricting process, where Governor DeSantis actually vetoed maps were drawn by the Republican-led legislature. And then instead of the legislature rewriting maps, they basically gave the Sharpie to DeSantis and said, okay, you draw it, right? You draw the maps. That was one of the worst examples of just the watering down of separations of power that is enumerated in our federal constitution and our state constitution. And you also spoke to culture wars. And I just want to remind folks, and I've been saying this a lot because I find it really important. Every culture war is a class war. And what I mean by that is when politicians try to use culture to divide us, they're really trying to extend the gap between those with means and those without means. And I'll use public education as an example. You know, when you destroy public education, what ends up happening is that families with means will be able to send their kids to private schools that are high quality. They'll be able to learn real history, become strong debaters, be free thinkers, go to the best colleges at the same time, and they'll survive this. You know, meanwhile, those of us who don't come from wealth, my family included, we're stuck in a public school system where the Bible is going to be emphasized, where teachers are going to be underpaid and overworked, where you're not going to have hands-on experiences, where there's going to be curriculum that is partisan, and then we're going to be stuck in those same universities. So basically creating a dynamic where you're going to have folks who, you know, have access to be independent and free thinkers, in contrast to those who won't, right? And so it's important for us to remember that every culture war is a class war. And every time DeSantis has a culture war, he's also distracting from his terrible policies on workers' rights, his terrible policies on corporate accountability. You know, Patty mentioned earlier the union busting bills. Like, Governor DeSantis pretends that he cares about workers by, railing towards anti-vaxxing and, his rhetoric around Disney, calling it the end of the woke kingdom, whatever. At the end of the day, Disney still receives all the same tax perks they did before. Like, Reedy Creek was not dismantled. It was just renamed and taken over by the governor's hostile cronies and extremists. But really, Disney receives all the same tax breaks. So when people ask me why Disney didn't fight it, because Disney's actually kind of fine with it. Like, as long as they get their tax breaks, their shareholders aren't too angry. And chances are they're just waiting for a new governor to come in that will be less extreme. Yeah. At the same time, Disney receives billions of dollars in tax breaks through our corporate tax system, which I have filed policy to close those loopholes that Republicans have never given us a hearing for. So every time DeSantis has this like shiny object that he's trying to distract people from, chances are he's doing something else that's anti-worker, that's good for big businesses, that doesn't hold polluters accountable, that takes away our freedoms, and we're just not paying attention, right? Like, the same day that Senator Blaise and Golia filed the bill to dismantle the Democratic Party was the same day he filed the bill to bust unions. But all the attention went towards this bill to cancel the Democratic Party, and not so much went towards the union busting bill. So just important for us to kind of remember, that we're dealing with people who are manipulative. We're dealing with folks that use distraction as a weapon, and we just can't fall for those traps.
Yeah, this is Mr. Bryant. Is there any way the Democratic Party can make these type of bill more of a state national news? Because what we're learning in this small environment is appears to be devastating. And I think if we don't communicate, get the word out to a broader audience, it's always going to be a reactive type of legislative process. And I just, give me a mic and put me on education. So that's kind of what I'm thinking. If we don't shout this out, it's going to happen with no resistance.
Thank you, Mr. Bryan. This is such a great point, right? And so this is what Republicans are really effective at compared to Democrats, right? Like, getting your message out there, right? Now, part of it is because the Republican Party literally has like propaganda machines. I mean, we're all watching the lawsuit between Dominion voting systems and Fox News, where Fox News executives and anchors admitted to lying about the 2020 election cycle, right? And there's this constant pattern, especially with DeSantis, where he leaks a story to a conservative blog, and then before you know it, he's doing a presser on Fox News and OAN on these outlets, and he's getting his message out to a national audience, while we're just like struggling for scraps, right? Part of the challenge is the media landscape, where the media wants to talk about the sensational issues more than the substantive ones. So it's on us as Democrats, and when we have those media opportunities, to bring it back, to not be reactive, but to speak to the good work that we're doing and how we're solving problems versus them creating problems. And I'll give you an example. I was invited to be on the Alex Wagner show about 2 nights ago. I think it was Tuesday night. It was a very last minute ask, and they want me to talk about DeSantis, and I said, and a new college, and I said sure. And so I got on MSNBC, and I pivoted. They asked me about DeSantis and Disney, and I pointed out, he doesn't close corporate tax loopholes. As Democrats, we're working towards that. So any opportunity we have on a national stage or even a local stage, we got to bring it back. We got to bring it back. But the challenge is that I would argue that Republicans just have a much stronger propaganda machine than our messaging tools. And that's why, I go door to door to promote the events that I have. And I mentioned Sunday night, at 8:00, we're doing a virtual event that is all focused on legislative session. And you can watch it on our Facebook page. We already have about 185 people RSVP'd, but I don't think that's good enough. This state has 22 million people. We should have a lot more people on it, right? So I go door to door to help promote it. I try to do a press release to get more media attention, but it is a challenge because I have found more than one example where reporters will come to my office if there's something DeSantis did and they want my reaction, compared to me press releasing something that maybe isn't as controversial. So that's the challenge, is that the media attention is always towards things that are sensational. So we as Democrats have to be more effective in bringing the message back to where it matters. And, I'm trying to help coach others in that as well. But I definitely agree with you. That is where we have to build more muscles. And I guarantee you, as a member of the Democratic House Caucus, I'm committed to that. And thank you for your question. And I do want to, share some degree of optimism, because we are seeing, especially more young people, our HBCUs, our immigrant community members, women. We are seeing more people come out to get engaged. And to your point, a lot of that is reactive, but my hope is that the energy can be sustained, because that's the only way we're going to win, is if that energy is sustained long term.
Anna, we want to thank you very much. We know we've already taken twice the amount of time that we had asked for, and I really appreciate your giving us this opportunity. For those that have more questions, would like to engage with Anna, I would encourage you to join her this Sunday. If you could tell us one more time how and where people can get that event, please.
Well, what I'm going to do, as I see Ellen get ready to join us too, I'm actually going to drop the link in the chat for everyone. But if you're not, able to click on that link, you just go to our Facebook page. You'll see in our events section, and our Facebook page is just Representative Anna V. Eskamani. But also, if you go there Sunday at 8:00, you'll see the live stream. But Sunday, 8:00 on our Facebook page, that is when we'll be airing our legislative preview, and it will be recorded, so you can always watch it later as well. And thank you again for having me.
Anna, thank you so much. And again, I can't thank you enough. I would hope that we get a chance for you to chat directly with our new president, Karen Houston. Karen is, of course, an old friend and a very well-respected labor leader here in Brevard County. Anyway, you know that, Anna, you are beloved in our county, and it is wonderful to see you. We are so proud whenever we hear news of your actions, see you on television, and congratulations on working on that PhD. We'll look forward to calling you Dr. Eskamani. Again, have a beautiful
God
night.
God willing, I will take all the prayers and blessings on that. So
thank you for fighting the fight up in Tallahassee. And again, to everyone here tonight, please give Anna Eskamani a round of applause. She is a real hero. Thank you so much for that.
I'll drop that link in the chat before I go. I appreciate y'all. Talk to you soon. Keep up the faith.
What a wonderful presentation, a report directly from Tallahassee, and to think that she was able to do that with us from her car. I would like to turn the table back one more time to Patty Farley. Patty, we cut you off the end. You've got a couple more minutes to finish your
Okay.
program, and then we'll
Well,
move along.
I'll be brief because I know that we're kind of running behind schedule here, but I don't know if you, okay, I don't know if this is going to make sense to you or not. What I have in my hand is in very small fine print,
Yes, we can see it.
an Excel sheet that is pages, okay? I ran off before our meeting, the bills that they've filed for education. There are over 99 education bills filed already, and there'll be more coming up. Now, of these, we have some highlighted that we talked about here, and we don't know how bad they are until they start discussing these things in committee hearings. And this is only one subject. My organization, we get together every Tuesday evening, and we sit down, and on a Zoom, we spend about 2 to 3 hours going through what transpired with the major bills the previous week, what's coming up this next week to discuss. If I've got any legislative junkies on this call that would like to be interested in helping us with these things, I'm going to put my email in here too, and you can contact me. We need all the help we can get. Now, one thing that I didn't mention, I was kind of saving it for last because we don't exactly know I was on the phone. We don't know how it's going to come about. But one of the bills that they're pushing through, during the pandemic, they could close down the Capitol and keep people from coming in and bothering them, okay? DeSantis is passing a bill right now to make it illegal to demonstrate at the Capitol. A lot of our groups are already preparing as to what you do if you're arrested in the Capitol. We don't know exactly what they're going to do, what they're going to say. You have to get all of these permissions to even get together in the Capitol, in the rotunda. Can you have signs? Can you demonstrate? Can you have a press conference like we've always done? We're not sure what's going to come about if we can even meet at the Capitol or on the Capitol property. We do know that a lot of things that they've done in committee hearings already, we won't be able to do, like the big get together that they had a couple of weeks ago here with Reverend Al Sharpton. That would be illegal under this bill and everything that's going down. So please watch. I'm going to put my email in the chat. If you're interested in getting involved, please contact me. We can use all the help we can get right now. Thank you, Phil, for having me tonight.
Well, thank you so much, Patty. Once again, if you were in the Front Street Civic Center, our normal venue, we would be all standing up and giving you a round of applause. Patty, again, you've been a real hero for us, and thank you for giving us all this important heads up. We used to have an event called the Awake the State, a rally that would basically tell people to pay attention because it's going to start getting ugly, and we don't do it anymore, but I suspect that may have to come back because people need to wake up and understand what's happening in Tallahassee will affect them. Most of us pay too much attention only to the national political things, but things that happen in our community, at the county board, at the school board, at the local level are just as important. And that, by the way, I see somebody's got their hand raised. We're going to be taking questions for Patty and for Jennifer in just a little while. We're going to move right on to our next speaker, and then after we have a couple of VIP guests that have a couple things to say, and then we'll be doing the Q&A, so everybody will have a chance to raise their hand and talk to both Patty Farley and Jennifer Jenkins. As I mentioned earlier, Jennifer Jenkins, she's the Brevard Public School Board member, licensed speech language pathologist who's worked in the public schools for 6 years. She's taught elementary, pre-K students. Her husband is a teacher, and her son hopefully will be part of our public schools soon. So Jennifer, I would like to open the floor to you and say welcome aboard. It's great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. A round of applause for Jennifer Jenkins.
Having me. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started. As an educator myself, my husband, a teacher, and having a young daughter who's heading quickly towards the end of her first grade, I wanted to serve on the school board because I'm invested in public education professionally and personally. And I never imagined this battle. I didn't imagine that there would be a time when ensuring a free and appropriate public education, free from discrimination, from inequity, from regulation, would be deemed woke ideology. And there's no question how we ended up here. Right now, our governor is actively dismantling our public schools while touring the country, campaigning on a freedom agenda, complete with a comprehensive list of all the things the free state of Florida prohibits, highlighting what he deems as accomplishments and elevating his political status with falsehoods and contradictions, claiming he puts parents first while continuously putting children and education last, bragging about moving forward in education as we drastically fall behind, boasting about historic increases in funding, but that historic funding still ranks Florida, the fourth largest economy in the United States, at just 43rd of the nation for public education funding. Florida would have to raise its funding by $10 billion to raise us to 25th in the nation. We hear boasting about raising the starting teacher salary, and that's wonderful. But what is he not telling you? Florida now ranks 48th in the nation for average teacher salary. That's right. Only 2 other states in the nation value experienced educators less than Ron DeSantis. Currently in Brevard, my husband, an educator for 13 years, is making a few $100s more than a new college graduate. And any business professional will tell you the solution to workforce stability is a strategic recruitment plan with a heavy focus on retainment. We started the school year with over 9,000 instructional vacancies across the state of Florida. And 7 months later, we see little to no improvement in those vacancies. And nearly half of those vacancies are classroom teachers, leaving thousands of students without a consistent certified educator in front of them. And the DeSantis administration is not just failing our teachers. It takes a village to successfully educate our students, and our school staff across our organizations are no stranger to insufficient wages. This administration hasn't done enough to support our school districts trying to bring those employees up to a $15 minimum wage, leaving our daily operations of our school systems, our custodians, cafeteria workers, and bus drivers as critical shortage areas right now. And his solution, a classic, this meal tastes disgusting. Do you want to try it? Right to our military veterans. And call me crazy, but offering a job that thousands of professionals are fleeing the scene of because of demoralizing pay and an increasingly hostile work environment doesn't really scream that we honor and respect our veterans. And apparently they agree, because it's been reported that only 7 veterans have taken advantage of this incentive program in the entire state of Florida. And his other solution, offering teacher sign-on bonuses to every person except individuals with actual teaching degrees. Hundreds of thousands of students are currently facing a revolving door of substitute teachers, while our governor is bragging about an economic surplus. And it tells me that our teacher shortage crisis is not only a problem, but a Ron DeSantis decision. But it's more than just money. Educators enter this career to answer a moral calling. When they open their doors, they are our children's safety and comfort. They are experienced professionals and experts in their field. But instead of fighting for our classrooms, one party has made it a focus to fight within them. Bigger government, more restrictions, stripping of instructional autonomy, and the removal of primary sources in media. They're playing politics with our children. Our governor raised and spent more money in his re-election campaign than the early literacy allocation for the entire state of Florida. This administration is celebrating school grades and performance while ignoring the alarming discrepancies among our minority populations. There's an average 29-point gap between reading proficiency rates in African-American students when compared to their white peers across the state of Florida. That gap widens to an alarming 34 points in math. And that gap is just as wide for all of our subgroups, Hispanic students, students with disabilities, and students in low-income areas. And the Republican solution? Expanding vouchers to increase the amount of taxpayers' money directly into private and charter schools with little to no accountability, while starving neighborhood public schools of their funding. Voucher programs equipped with messaging that your public schools have failed you. Well, no, the elected officials have failed public schools. Ron DeSantis is messaging across our nation his successful taking back of public schools. Well, here is the hard truth. 70% of school board members were already registered Republicans. 80% of the school boards in our state were already held by a Republican majority. The state house, the state senate, and the governor's office for over 20 years. So who exactly did he take our schools back from? This last election cycle wasn't a red wave of school board seats being flipped. Instead, we witnessed a civil war within the Republican Party, ousting their own and replacing them with those that vow blind loyalty to the DeSantis administration. I'm sure you're aware he has now drafted a hit list for the 2024 election. And quite frankly, I am elated to be placed at the top of it because it means I don't need to reevaluate my values. Values that we don't fight indoctrination by allowing the Heritage Foundation to redraft the statewide civics curriculum. Values that we want to avoid repeating history by teaching actual history, even if it's uncomfortable or ugly. Values that we honor parental rights by affording equal rights to all of our parents. But after all of this, I still actually have some hope because they have made a serious miscalculation. The war on public education is not a successful long-term partisan political tool because Republican voters send their children to their local community schools too. And Republican voters love and trust their teachers. And when they attack our schools, they attack the very base for which they're pandering. It is our job to successfully message across our state that successful public schools benefit all of us, regardless of our registered parties, and that we will elect those who pledge to represent the people, not the governor. We will elect officials who believe in fully funded public schools, equipped with equitable resources and respected and qualified educators at the forefront of every classroom. And we will preserve the very foundation of our democracy, our very, 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 very important public education system.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jennifer, that is an absolutely beautiful statement, a very eloquent point of looking at this incredible situation that we're in. I personally want to take a moment to say thank you because I know that you have taken tremendous heat throughout the past couple of years, personally being threatened, your family being threatened. Patty Farley's just put up a little heart, and I'll tell you what, I think we all have a great deal of respect and love for you and for your family for all that you've been through. It has been unfair and infuriating to see this. You know that we're all with you. We're going to be taking questions in just a few minutes. We have by the way, I would have to say we all should give you a round of applause for your wonderful presentation, for all that you've done. Again, if we were in a live event, you'd be surrounded by a room full of people standing up and applauding right now. So thank you for all that you've done. And we look forward to asking you some more questions. We have two special VIP guests that are here in the room with us. And I'm going to ask both of them, give them a couple minutes to take the floor and give us their perspective. The first is Scott Hottenstein. He's the president of the Democratic Public Education Caucus of Florida, a civics teacher, coach, mentor, 2019 Teacher of the Year finalist in Hillsborough County Public Schools. Will be then followed by Bernard Bryant. He's an engineer and mentor, educational information chair of the South Brevard branch of the NAACP. So if Scott, you're available, please take yourself off mute. We'll give you a few minutes to tell us your perspective on this important issue. Scott Hottenstein.
So thank you, Phil, and thank you, Space Coast Progressive Alliance, for letting me talk. I'm a civics teacher, so I was given, like, I'm used to 45-minute classes, right? That's how much time I have. I think it's 5 minutes. Dan's cringing even though he's clapping. And I got to tell you, Phil, you have the absolute best Zoom voice I have ever heard. Like, I'm our vice president and the chair of our political committee, Stephanie Vanos, is also on the Zoom. I think she can say hi real quick.
Sure. By the way, it's a birth defect. I think if I could have that fixed, it'd be good. Stephanie, you're here?
I'm here. Hi. Thank you so much for letting us speak tonight. I'm not going to take up any time, but just wanted to say hi.
Thank you for being and like earlier in the meeting, we were texting back and forth like, man, what a great voice. But anyway, so I am the president of the Democratic Public Education Caucus of Florida. And our mission is to support pro-public education policies and to support pro-public education candidates across the state of Florida. So how do we do that? And I'll just give you quick examples because, oh my God, like Patty and Anna and Jen have really laid out all the difficulties we're having with public education today. We would just be repeating what they said. But Stephanie and I have been up to Tallahassee a number of times, and we've actually testified against the voucher bills, HB1 and SB 202 when it hits its next committee member. We've been in the offices, in the minority leaders' staff room, trying to come up with messaging and counterpoints for all of these awful education bills that's going on. When it comes to supporting pro-public education candidates, we were pretty well involved in the 2022 cycle. We supported Aaron and Kim in Brevard County. And I don't know how far up and down the coast your membership goes, but Cindy Gibbs in Indian River and Ruben Colon up in Volusia. But what we noticed is that all the candidates wanted money, and there are state laws about the caucus giving money. And so we created our own political committee, and Stephanie is the chair of that. So we've been out. I think
this copy's white, sitting on the chair, on the base of the chair.
We have been out visiting people all the way from Naples to Santa Rosa, trying to talk about public education, doing exactly what you're doing here, town hall meetings on the dangers of vouchers, and just trying to get support going for 2024. I know that here in Brevard County, you had a great group called Families for Safe Schools, but a lot of the leaders of that group is moving away, are moving out of the county or out of the state. I would offer to you that our state caucus might be a place, if you were part of that group and you want to stay involved in education, that that you could come and join our organization. Stephanie's going to drop some links into the chat for both our public education caucus and our political committee, which is called Help Out Public Education, or HOPE. The last thing I want to leave you is we're having our first in-person conference on April 22nd in Winter Park. And the title of the conference is similar to tonight's title, Defending Public Education. One of the things we're having is a panel of school board members with your own Jennifer Jenkins, another DeSantis targeted school board member, Tom Edwards from Sarasota County, Lucia Baez-Geller, and we're waiting to confirm one more school board member. So if you want more information about that, you could shoot us emails, you could look at our social media, or join our email list, and that information will be given to you. And I know I don't have 45 minutes, so I will end there and hang out. If anyone has any particular questions for our organizations at the end. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Scott. We really appreciate your being here. And it is important for people to understand that sitting at home and watching TV and throwing something at the television isn't anywhere near as effective as getting involved and doing something and contacting your state representative, your state senator, write a letter to the governor. The reality is that you got to do something. Getting up to rally, to tally, to lobby your representatives, all very, very important. Our next speaker, Bernard Bryant, engineer, mentor, education information chair of the South Brevard branch of NAACP. Bernard, you have the floor.
I am so honored to be here, Phil. Thank you so much. And I just want to say thank you to Miss Patty and the Congressman, Mrs. Honor. I've learned so much today, and I'm truly motivated now. I'm at the grassroots level. I'm also the educational chair for the Concerned Citizen of South Brevard, so I'm wearing two hats. And I spend a lot of time working with schools, SAC teams, going to school board meetings to really understand the processes. My background is engineering. My last few years before I retired, I worked as a reliability engineer. So my background is looking at data, trying to figure out what our root causes and what are some opportunities. But I've learned so much today. And my community mission is to ensure that all students receive the best education in a peaceful and harmonious environment. So that's what's motivating me, looking at data, standing before school boards and really focusing on the educational gap. And I want to thank Ms. Jenkins. She touched a little bit on what some of the gaps are, but I just would like to highlight a few things. I want to highlight the educational gap, and I also would like to highlight the diversity gap as well. Just from my analysis, as well as public data, there are approximately 64% of African-American students that are reading below levels. And there are also around 64% of African-American students that are behind in math. But when you look at the gap, you're looking at approximately 30 to 34%. This is a colossal failure. It's a colossal problem. So that's why we go to several school board meetings to really try to understand, what are the strategies going forward. I also would like to highlight something else. I had an opportunity to review the clearinghouse data, and what that data shows what happened after a student graduated from high school. And the reason why I was focusing on this data, when we look at the poverty rate of African-American in the Brevard County district, it's around 74%. So that's a disaster. So what I saw was in the data is that only 40% of African-American students that leave high school actually go to college. So what that means is 60% of them does not have a productive job, does not have a strong impact on our community, and it goes from cycle to cycle. So we're looking at grassroots opportunities. We're looking at what are some of the drivers that's creating this gap. And one of the things we're working on now is the kindergarten readiness rate, which is labeled as Flickr. Only 39% of African-American students and students of color are ready for kindergarten. So what that propagates, across that life cycle, the ability for a child to read, the teachers are always in a preventive mode, trying to really recover why that student is not reading well or not doing math well. So that is where our focuses are at this moment. And we are trying to understand, trying to evaluate the data to propose strategic plan at the school board level. And then one of the other things that really shocked us, about a year ago, we had a panel with some high school students. And one of the African-American students said, Mr. Bryan and Ms. Bryan, I saw my first African-American teacher when I was in 12th grade. So the diversity, the opportunities, is a tremendous opportunities. You know, when you look at the total population of African-American students, it's around 15%, but only 5% of those are actually teachers, and only 5% of those are actually in the administrative field. So what a tremendous opportunity there as well. So I'm encouraged, but yet I know the challenge is there. So we're asking our parents to get more involved. We understand that parental engagement is the #1 key driver of how a child can be successful in school. But we also understand that the school leadership is a very important key on how parental engagement grows within the school systems. So this is kind of where we are. There's some shocking data, and we try to operate our strategies based on data, and we hope that we can learn more as we go forward. So I just want to thank you, Phil, and Ms. Jennifer Jenkins and Ms. Patty and Ms. Anna for what they shared with us today, which is giving us a little bit more weapon in terms of how to move forward in the future. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Bernard. I thank you for some of those numbers. They are kind of mind-numbing. It is disappointing, to say the least. So the reality of the world that we are faced. I know that there are people like Jennifer Jenkins and many school board leaders and many of our administrators across this state who are struggling to try to make things better. And they have made things better in some areas. I know that for certain. When you look back at the history of public education in the state of Florida, when they were first getting this organized, it was ridiculous. It was horrible, and it has been for a long time. And we frankly have built a quality public education system, and it is being dismantled before our eyes.
Right.
And that is one of the great shocks and challenges that we face. So for our audience, I want to, first of all, thank you again, Bernard. I'm sure we would all be giving you a round of applause. Thank you to you and Scott as our VIP guests today. It is now time to open the floor to our members, our guests who are here with us on the Zoom. And I'm going to ask once again, if you would like to ask a question, please do, first of all, direct your question to one of our speakers. That would be to Patty Farley, or to Jennifer Jenkins, to Scott Ottenstein, or to Bernard Bryant. And I would ask you, please identify yourself and make it a question rather than a statement. Please do ask a question. And we want everybody to have a chance. We have plenty of time for everybody, I think, to be able to ask a question today and to get a good answer from these wonderful experts in this field. So please, when you ask the question, identify yourself, direct the question to an individual on the panel or to the entire panel. And by the way, I do encourage our panelists to ask questions of each other. This is an opportunity for a free-flowing discussion among our panelists. If you have something to add, a question that you would like to ask. If you are on a computer or on a phone or on an iPad, look for the little reactions window, click on that, and then find the little hand, raise your hand. We've got somebody that has been holding their hand up for a while, and it is Stop Moms for Liberty. I don't know if there's a name associated with that. If you could identify yourself and ask your question, you now have the floor.
Hi, Phil. Can you hear me okay?
Got you loud and clear.
Okay, great. My name is Liz Micatarian. I live up in Titusville, and I'm actually calling in from Massachusetts. I'm out of state, but I'm thrilled that I could at least tag on to the end of this gathering tonight. Hi there. So yes, we are, we're really an entity, but not a formalized entity. I'm a retired teacher. I actually lived in Michigan when Betsy DeVos started her shenanigans for privatization in Michigan. But then she kind of went quiet for a while, and things were going along pretty well, and education wasn't as much under the attack as we see now. And then she was, of course, put in as Secretary of Education for the United States of America. Well, that kind of blew my mind. So I started digging in to see what she was up to, what the privatization movement was all about. And what I discovered is that they were moving so fast and so forward because they had a definite strategy, and that was a fear campaign to get parents to think that our public school system was just horrific, that there were horrible things going on. That started kind of quietly, kind of under the radar. And then the pandemic came along, and parents were, at first, really, parents were so grateful for teachers when the pandemic first happened. And what we were hearing was, oh my gosh, how do you do this every day? It's so wonderful, blah, blah, blah. And then the narrative turned because the Republican Party and the privatization movement on the national level discovered if they got parents, specifically moms was their plan, mad enough that they could be the boots on the ground for this big privatization movement. So make no mistake, this is not about concerned moms that come to the microphone and they're worried about a particular book, or they're worried about, bathrooms. That's not what's really happening here. That's all just, the symptoms of the disease. Those are the things we can see. And so what we need to do is keep spreading that message that this is not about these particular issues that they're talking about, LGBTQ issues, DEI issues. It's really not about that. It's about driving people away from the public school system into private schools, as you mentioned, private, funding with vouchers, as Jennifer was talking about. And I think Anna was talking about that as well. And that's what messaging is now spreading across the country. So
thank you for your patience, Liz. And I'm curious,
Oh,
I
no.
think there's a question hiding in there somewhere. Do you have a
There
question?
is. Yeah. Well, I don't know. He told me to raise my hand because I was
No,
asked to
please.
speak
Do you
up or
have
something.
a question for our panel?
Well, I kind of do. It's actually for the entire group, because what you've done tonight with this meeting and everybody that's represented here is to pull together folks that are doing all different aspects and working on things so that the communication lines are open amongst different people. We're Space Coast, of course, for this meeting. And that's what we've done with Stop Moms for Liberty, is we have a national movement. We have, I think it's 20 some odd counties in Florida. We have almost 30 states involved in the movement. And the good news is people are fighting like crazy out there. We thought we were just, kind of lost here in Florida, but they are fighting like crazy, and they are actually working against DeSantis already, which is phenomenal. So I guess my question would be the one, and I'm not sure exactly who would answer this, but for anybody actually that's in the meeting tonight, how do we get enough, because our name alone, stands out, Stop Moms for Liberty. It's pretty clear what our mission is, to stop them. But it's not as, I think what Anna was saying, you have to kind of have a sensationalistic thing to get media coverage. And that is our weak point right now, because I'm telling you, this movement is huge. We've got thousands and thousands and thousands of people involved, but I can't seem to get that level of media coverage. So I don't know if there's any tips to move forward with, having that come to pass, that anybody has any strategies or different tips they could give me for how do you get that media coverage? I mean, other than, burning down a building or something, how do we
We
get
certainly
people
don't endorse the
No, I
question.
didn't think you would.
So to the question for our panel, Patty, Jennifer, Scott, Bernard, how do we raise awareness? How do we provide a powerful message that will wake people up to this important issue? Any of you or all of you have something you'd like to advise Liz?
I don't mind jumping in on here. I have a unique experience with the media, unfortunately, because of the things people had done to me. So, unfortunately, that's why the media gets in contact with me. But I think what's really important is to show up to those school board meetings, constantly make public comments when they're appropriate, encourage members to write op-eds in not only your local newspaper, but to other newspapers across the state of Florida. It doesn't seem like it's loud and proud and effective, but it absolutely is, because that's where you're going to find and meet the people who are going to want to continue to join you on your journey. I don't have advice how to grow from there, but I think it's important to consistently do that, and not just stay on social media. Get out there, and maybe make a connection with a local school board in a different county. Show up at their school board meeting. Sometimes that'll get the media's attention too. Why is this group from Brevard County over here in Orange? I think that would be a really good place to start.
Yeah, in fact, we probably should ask our friends from Orange County to come to Brevard County to speak. But anyway, let's see. Patty, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes, it sounds almost biblical, but you'll be known by your works. Okay. Show up at the school board meetings, show up in Tallahassee if you can afford to make the trips up and back. Take people with you, be vocal. I personally, I don't think it helps when you make a negative scene, okay? But by speaking in front of the groups and the legislature and doing it in such a way that it can bring positive attention to you and your organization, I think it makes a world of difference. People will get to know you.
It is an interesting idea to celebrate the public school teacher, to celebrate the professor. All of us, everybody here, we're reading this material that we have on the screen in front of us because somebody taught us. You know what? We didn't pop out as babies and know how to talk, didn't know how to eat. The reality is we are standing on the shoulders of those who've taught us. And truly, that is something to celebrate, and to celebrate that loud and clear, and to say, I want to stand with teachers. I want to stand with professors. I want public education to be stronger than it has ever been. I think that's a powerful message. I don't know, Scott, Bernard, do you have anything to add?
Yes, I'd like to add. One of the things that the Republicans do well, they say the same message all the time. And they're very much in tune with that. And I'm seeing this more at the national level, where they're saying now that they want to take away Medicaid. So maybe if a theme is developed that they want to take away public schools, and we consistently say that message based on the laws that I'm learning tonight, I think that will resonate on a national level as well as a state level.
A good point. Indeed. They want to take away Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and public schools as well. And your right to read the book of your choice, or to teach children the way that you want it, the teachers believe that they should be teaching.
Can I just clarify?
Sure.
Thank you, Phil. We are doing that on a national level. I'm not looking for more membership. I'm going to be frank. Our weakest link right now is the Space Coast. So I'm hoping that by participating tonight, that all the organizations here present will know who we are and know what we're doing. All of the strategies that have been mentioned, those are happening very, very well across the country. And so I'm just trying to get some, local coverage so that the Space Coast realizes that, yeah, we have to be in this movement too. So thank you very much for the time. And hopefully there'll be a list of participants or something from tonight.
Yes, and this will be on our YouTube channel as well for replaying later for those who haven't been able to make it tonight. Do you have a website that we could go to look up Stop Moms for Liberty?
We're most active on Facebook. You can find us. It's Stop Moms for Liberty is the full name. We do have a website that actually, I think there's someone on the call tonight who is going to help me to build that more effectively. And so I think just making some contacts with some of the leaders that I see here this evening, I think that might be a way for us to try and get this pushed more in the Space Coast. I mean, honestly, Moms for Liberty started here. Jennifer has been under attack since the very beginning of Moms for Liberty, and they're doing such a good job in other places. I'm really trying to promote our Space Coast to do the same, to push back. As you heard, there was support for other candidates, and yet our school board was flipped. So now there's a Moms for Liberty majority on the school board. And, that's just something that we need to continue to fight against. I also real quick saw a couple other members that are in tonight that are doing some activities under kind of the thought of school board accountability. Now that these members are on board and making decisions and taking actions publicly, we need to hold them accountable because some really horrific things are happening and Jennifer cannot fight them alone. So we need to get the whole Space Coast behind what's going on in Brevard Public Schools.
Thank you again, Liz. And we have several other people that have had their hands raised for a while. Let's take their questions. Carol Becker, you have the floor.
Phil,
Oh, yes.
Phil, can I just say something
Sure,
real
Scott.
quick to address what we were talking about? A couple of things that we do. We have messaging slides where we shared with candidates, we share with everyone, we put them in our weekly newsletter where we break down all sorts of topics like, hey, I don't have kids in school, why should I support public education? And we give like sound bites. And that's important, not just for candidates or Democratic leaders, but for all of us to talk to friends, families, neighbors. Legislatively, we also provide like a one-page summary, including links to possible letters to the editor formats. So you could see all of that on our Facebook page, or if you join the newsletter in the link. So yeah, definitely common messaging is something we with.
And Scott, I see that you've got us, an email of scott.hottenstein@gmail.com for anybody that had any questions. HOTTENSTEIN. By the way, is it Hottenstein or Hottenstein? Did I mispronounce it? Hottenstein.
It is Hottenstein, but I don't take offense. I was in the Navy for 24 years. Eventually, I was Commander 8. And when I was a teacher, and even when I ran for office on the ballot, I was Mr. H. Just makes it easier for everyone.
Well, thank you, sir. As long as they're not calling you Preparation H, that's the good thing. Anyway, forgive me. I'm sorry. You've never heard that before, I'm sure.
I want everyone to forget that right now.
Thanks, buddy. I'll tell you what, Carol, I know you've had your hands up. Please, Carol Becker, you have the floor.
Okay, this is just hopefully really quick. I'm a pediatric nurse practitioner, and up until a year ago, I worked for the child protection team of Brevard, reviewing reports and doing physicals on kids that are suspected of being abused or neglected. So I know that for a fact that there was a malicious child abuse report sent in about Jennifer, and hopefully I think DCF resolved it pretty quickly because it was so false. I just wanted to say that. The other thing I wanted to say is, I have a master's degree as a nurse practitioner. I'm not experienced as a teacher. I have no credentials as a teacher, but I can still work as a substitute teacher. But I have several friends that are substitute teachers who have education degrees and have certifications as a teacher, but they didn't retire as a teacher. And so they make less pay than a substitute that did retire, and I would make the same pay as them, which I really think is unfair. And I just want to make sure you were aware that that's how the pay scale works for the substitutes.
And so this is a question that's directed to Jennifer? Or you just wanted to put it on the floor?
No, I appreciate that. So I'm aware of the pay scale, but I've never been presented with a situation like that before. So that I appreciate that. That's something I'll bring up because it is an interesting concept. So the way that the substitute pay is broken down is based on high school diploma, bachelor's, retired educator, things of that nature. So interesting to think about. They didn't retire as a teacher, but they are an educator. So interesting. And I just want to say I appreciate you bringing up the lovely DCF situation. And on a positive note, though, I don't know where we'll ever lead. The Satellite Beach Police Department agreed to reopen an investigation into a couple of interesting people that I really suspect were involved. I don't know whether or not we'll be able to prove it, but I'm hoping sooner or later someone will rat someone else out. So thank you.
Jennifer, I don't know if you want to talk about these issues. So and I know it's fairly well known in our community, but many people probably don't know about the attacks that you have suffered. Do you want to talk about that, or would you rather leave that for another day? Maybe
I mean, I don't mind. I think a lot of people are pretty much aware. Some of the most egregious things, happened all within that 2-day period. Unfortunately, protesters outside of my house, vandalizing my property in the middle of the night, a large FU burned into my grass where, children walk to school every single day. That afternoon, a visit from DCF, and as well as an investigator with the police department. There's so much more that wasn't publicized about some of our elected officials, some of the things that they do behind the scenes that are really disturbing. Two private investigators following me around, digging through my trash cans, creating a false website about an affair with a friend of mine, just really disgusting, egregious things that just, it was not easy. I'm not going to lie. There was a very long period where I cried almost every single day, impacted my daughter, impacted my marriage, impacted my relationship with some of my friends at some points. But I'm on the other side of it, and I've grown, and I'm proud of who I am. In a weird way, I am grateful because I don't think it could ever get any worse. And so I think I'm prepared to take on the world at this point. So, and just when that list came out, that I was a target, my first reaction was literally to laugh. And, I was getting calls from the media that acted as if I'd be really upset and jarred by it. And I just thought, man, you have no idea what I went through. So I'm proud of who I've grown to be. And I'm proud that I was able to provide an example to be strong and to persevere for my daughter.
And Jennifer, we are so proud of you. We really, really are. I don't know if you can see many of the faces of our participants are clapping their hands for you, sending you love. If you remember, when I was a kid, Richard Nixon had an enemies list that was published, and people realized the president of the United States had tremendous power to harass citizens just because they disagreed with the man politically. And of course, our previous president, most recently, clearly has an enemies list, and it's terrifying to have people threaten you. And well, anyway, Lee,
one of the fun facts I'd love to share, since this is something most people don't know, or it wasn't really ever published every time I would talk about it, but the morning of that protest, and then what led to be like the most egregious thing that happened to me, that morning I had invited myself to a press conference that Ron DeSantis was hosting at our local Department of Health. I introduced who I was given permission to go upstairs with the media, and I sat down for 5 minutes. They came in and they removed me. They said it wasn't open to the public, while all of our Republican elected officials stood behind the governor. And that night is when the people showed up on my doorstep.
Wow. That's interesting. I've not heard that. Next question. I see Larry Abdullah has his hand up. Larry, please tell us your question and direct it to a panelist, if you would, please.
Yeah, I was interested that Jennifer was saying something about maybe some, the Republican parents in Brevard and what their views might be, because, some people might assume that they share these kind of radical views with people like DeSantis, but maybe they don't. Maybe they're educated people. And I'm just wondering if there have been surveys, outside surveys maybe, of parents on some of these issues to see where they really feel.
Yeah, I can speak to that on a couple of different levels. So right before our radical school board made the decision to fire Dr. Mullins, we had a parent survey go out, and we had about 20, don't quote me on this, but about 25,000 respondents, which is quite a lot for a simple survey on the internet. And it came back that over 75% of our families were happy and satisfied with our public schools. And so, Democrats weren't the only ones filling out that survey, of course, especially in a Republican district. I also like to tell people my email is public record. Sure, I get a lot of hate email and a lot of people who are happy about some of the egregious things that happen, but quite frankly, it's the same 10 people over and over again. It's not a majority of people. It's a very, very, very vocal minority. And I also get this as well. Every time I'm out in the community, I get people who say, I just want to thank you. I know you don't hear this very often. I want to thank you for all that you do. And I try as often as I can to say, actually, I hear it a lot. I appreciate it. I need to hear it because some of the grossness is so gross and so loud, it's still deflating. But I hear it a lot. I don't have people coming up to me and saying terrible things. I truly believe that the majority of the residents of this county love their public schools, are satisfied with their educators. I just think it's difficult for us to break through the everyday life of an average voter, for them to truly understand what's going on, right? An average person doesn't have the time in the day to sit there and study these bills that are being passed, or really genuinely understand how they're impacting their classrooms and ultimately their students' lives. And so sometimes when it gets sensationalized in the media, they just tune it out, or they think that's not happening. That doesn't make any sense. My kid's doing fine. And so I think that's the difficult part for us. I also like to argue, I would have never won my election by 10 percentage points statistically if a significant amount of Republicans didn't support me. And this was back when I was pro-mask and my opponent was completely against masks. You know, the most divisive topic we could talk about when it comes to public education at the time. So, you know, I don't really have a poll on, registered parties here in Brevard, but I feel very, very strongly that my interactions, my public records, I really believe the majority of people support our public education system.
Thank you.
There was a poll. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just inviting you
There
to
was
add
a poll
in.
done. The results came. Yeah. The results came out Monday. It came from Progress Watch, and it was Florida-wide, not necessarily Space Coast or Brevard. And there was good news, bad news. Good news was that 87% of the people who were polled said that they want to increase spending on public education and teacher pay. When asked to identify what the most important issue was in Florida, 61% said education. But then the bad news, and this goes to Jennifer's point where a lot of the voters are just overwhelmed and low information, 6 out of 10 were in support of the voucher bill, which can potentially take $4 billion out of the education budget. So there is strong support for public education, but low information on what these bills are actually doing to it. So again, it's messaging and talking to people and explaining what's really happening.
And Patty, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, and to comment both on what Scott just said and Jennifer. First, for myself, when I was teaching, you're teaching between working all day, grading papers all night, making lesson plans. You don't have time to go back and forth to Tallahassee. I taught government for 30 some years, and I had to wait till I retired to actually become this much of an activist, because there's no way to do it while I was teaching. I had to work for a living, and we have in our society, most people are concerned about their own family, their job, whether they have food on the table for their family. We're going to have to educate the people as to what these bills mean. That's why what we're doing tonight is important. But there were, I think at the top point, we had 70 some people on the call. Those people got to tell people. We have to let people know what these voucher bills are actually going to do to our school system, or they won't know, because most people are more concerned about their jobs, taking kids back and forth to what they need to, and making sure there's food on the table. And we don't even have newspapers that much anymore that people read to find out what's going on. So education is the key.
It is a very interesting problem that we're in, where media is consumed. The primary media source is social media, whereas most people don't subscribe to the newspaper. They seldom watch news on television or radio. Kids don't listen to the radio anymore. They're not going to listen to NPR and listen to the Tallahassee Report, that kind of thing. So most of us are quite ignorant. And like you, it was the first time I had the chance to go up to Tallahassee to protest after I retired. I know that we got a
Bill, we have somebody from Families for Safe Schools with a hand up.
And she's the next person to be called. Judy, you have the floor. You have a question, please. Oh, and please unmute yourself.
Yep, that works. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Families for Strong Public Schools is a statewide, nonpartisan, nonprofit 501c3. We are working to organize parents to become advocates because, as Patty was just saying, when you have kids in school, they have activities, you have a job, it's really difficult. So we're trying to organize parents to do what they can, when they can. We're hosting a series of webinars to explain the legislation that's coming out. We did one last week to explain what happened in Arizona and why it's dangerous that that's going to happen here after the voucher bill is filed. So I'm the Central Florida regional organizer. I work in Orange, Osceola, Seminole, and Brevard counties. And it's been very difficult to organize in Brevard, just as Liz said, it's hard to kind of make inroads into Brevard, especially if you don't live there. I live in Orange County. So if anyone has any advice or any connections that they would love to pass along to me, that would be wonderful. Just in terms of finding parents that want to get involved and want to organize and want to write letters to the editor or come to Tallahassee, whatever it is. We host a weekly public education statewide alliance call on Fridays. I host a Zoom meeting every Sunday night at 7. Like you said, like everyone has said, the key here is going to be that grassroots activism, that involvement, waking up people to the existential threat that we're facing in terms of public education. And we do find that there is a groundswell of support for it, but the messaging that's coming from the Republican Party is so confusing, and it's so difficult to figure out, am I supposed to support vouchers or oppose vouchers? So we're just trying to connect with as many parents as we can and turn them into advocates and turn them into voters and turn them into influencers, so that they can come into meetings like this, get the information, and then go out and disseminate it among their networks. Our website is strongflschools.com. If anyone wants to take a look there, we have a whole section on how to take action, what to do, what's coming up. And we're, building out that network statewide, because that's really the only path to victory at this point for public schools. It's the only path to survival, I think.
Well, thank you very much for joining us, Judy. We really appreciate that. Have you tried reaching out to the Brevard Federation of Teachers, the BFT?
No, but that's a good idea. Thank you.
That's
yeah.
I would recommend it. I tell you what, let's put that to our panel. Patty, Jennifer, Scott, Bernard, do you have any recommendations for Liz? Judy, excuse me, for Judy.
That's okay. And Liz too.
And you'll need to unmute yourself, Patty. I'm not sure if you're talking.
I was trying to unmute.
Oh, sorry.
I would suggest make yourself known. Go around to some organizations, attend some of their meetings, and tell people about your organization and see if you can get some involvement that way.
Thank you. Yeah, we're trying to kind of, and we've been very successful in Orange County just because that's where I live. And that's, like somebody had said, you go to the school board meetings and start speaking. And that's how I got started, and was able to organize, people that way. And so it's just geography. We're trying to target some parent leaders over in Brevard that can help pick up that mantle.
And incidentally, I saw that we had Fran Bear, a past president of the BFT, who had her hand raised. I didn't get a chance to call on her. Fran, if you're still here, I think you're really next in line. You had your hand up quite a bit, and you might even be able to answer Judy's question as well. Fran Bear, if you're still here.
I am. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very good to be here with you this evening. My question, and Judy, I would very much urge you to contact the Brevard Federation of Teachers, because I know that they are aligned with your mission as well. My question actually was to Jennifer regarding discipline, which has been a big subject in our community of late, and wondering what the school district is doing as far as the disparity between the number of students of color who are being uh, suspended, and if anything is being done on that.
A great question. For
Mr. Brian can jump on here too, because with full transparency, he's the data man, and the reason I know more than I knew before. So I think he's going to definitely follow up on here. Quite frankly, we are doing nothing about discipline. That entire narrative was a show and a facade, self-serving for someone to put themselves in the center of a conversation and look like a champion before they run for a different political office. There was no goal. I did a public records request to the Brevard County Sheriff's Office to see the communications that were happening during that time, and they responded to them. My fellow board member didn't. And it revealed that there was a letter drafted by Sheriff Wayne Ivey that wanted us. He drafted it back in August, actually, and it didn't have the name of a chairman on it because we didn't have one yet. We had Ms. Belford, and he sent it that day to our new chairman. And all it asked was for us to strengthen our cell phone policy, to have it mirror Polk County, which I don't necessarily agree with it. The overall concept wasn't a terrible ask, but the end result was terrible. If a child got caught recording a fight or anything like that on their cell phones, they would automatically get a 10-day suspension, which, is ridiculous, quite frankly, because often students are doing those things and sharing it with our administration. And unfortunately, it's kind of what helps us identify some of the perpetrators. That was really ultimately the goal of Wayne Ivey, but it got spun into this insane conversation. So with the help of Mr. Brian, I tried to use that opportunity to have a real conversation, to pivot from the narrative that our teachers union, as well as that school board member and that office, the sheriff, were saying that our staff was being handcuffed by laws. That's why we had discipline problems. And essentially what they meant by that was they believed that the laws that protect our Black students and our students with disabilities were stopping us from disciplining our kids. It's completely false. Quite frankly, we are over disciplining our Black students and our students with disabilities. Quite frankly, the state is taking a look at us because we're doing it way too much. We're the 10th largest county in the state of Florida. We have the 10th largest number of referrals in the state of Florida, which means we're proportionate. Our behavior is pretty normal compared to the rest of the state, but we're number 1 for placements in ALCs. We're number 4 for suspensions. We're number 1 for expulsions. So we're over disciplining our kids. And when you start breaking down those areas, you start to realize we're disproportionately disciplining our Black students and our students with ESE. For instance, in our ALCs, and Bernard, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe that 49% of our ALC placements are Black students. And of those Black students, 25% of them also have a designation of being ESE.
Could you explain ALC, please? What is that?
It's an alternative learning center. So typically, we are not forced to have one of these, but if a student is going to be expelled from school, sometimes they'll be given a choice. Instead of being expelled from school, you can go ahead and attend an alternative learning center. So a different school setting, basically the most restrictive setting you can be in. And what's scary about it is those numbers are plain as can be. And some of our board members believe that data isn't real, that data isn't accurate. So where we are right now, we have pushed for an audit to be done. And I believe my fellow school board members think that audit's going to reveal their narrative. It's going to justify everything they've been saying, when quite frankly, it's not. It's going to just double down on the information that I already presented at that discipline meeting, that Mr. Brian has been presenting over and over again. And it's going to be hard for them to ignore it. My hope is that it's presented in a way that they can't ignore it, and that maybe we will make a difference for our African-American students and our students with disabilities. But I know that was a really long answer, but unfortunately at the end of it, we haven't done anything. We haven't done anything. We added one sentence in our wireless communication device policy that just repeats something that was already in there just in the beginning, so that our kids really know they shouldn't be filming each other.
And Jennifer, thank you for that answer. We're running out of time and we have two more questions. Let's go to those quickly if we can.
May I just say thank you very
Sure.
much, Jennifer, and I hope you will let us know how we can help.
Thank you, Fran. Gina, you've been waiting patiently. Would you like to ask your question quickly and we can get a quick answer for you?
Question and comment. I am a 25-year veteran teacher of Brevard County Schools in Pax River, Maryland, when my husband served post 9/11. I've taught AP, Cambridge, and IB as a history teacher. I am also part of Stop Moms for Liberty. I watched last week during school board meeting the real impact of universal vouchers, lessons from Arizona, while also watching the school board meeting to see some of the members of the League of Women Voters, Space Coast, that I belong to. And I also belong to Duval County because I was up at Duval for 2 years. I'm very concerned about what's going on with the AP African American Studies. Just a note, as an AP grader for College Board for 5 years, the framework is constantly changing. And when this framework came out, keeping in mind I've taught AP for over 12 years, I was astounded of how much material was covered. And also the issue of having a project for the students to do is an outstanding idea. College Board does their job well. I have a love-hate relationship with them. But in listening to the real impact of universal vouchers, lessons from Arizona, these charter schools have no regulation whatsoever in what they can purchase. I'm watching this webinar and my mouth is dropping, and I have friends that I grade with at College Board that are from Arizona, and I'm asking them questions and they went, oh, it's horrible. The amount of money they thought was going to impact was like $337 million in what it impacted. This is a serious issue that's coming up. And my advice to us, to all the organizations, I worked in marketing and advertising, my degrees in communications. We need to let parents be aware of what's going to happen if their kid can no longer get an AP, a capstone diploma, or a Cambridge diploma, or an IB diploma. The devastation that is going to cause, that these parents are now going to have to pay for those 2 years of college that their kids could get for free. And that needs to be a focus as well.
And just so the audience knows, AP is advanced placement. IB, I'm not sure what that is.
International Baccalaureate, it is out of New York and also DC. IB is recognized worldwide. There are IB students from all over the world, as with Cambridge. So these are all diploma driven. So the kids are not paying for the first 2 years of college because they get the AP credit, they get the Cambridge credit, or they get the IB diploma.
Well, thank you, Gina. We actually are running over time, so I'm going to ask very quickly, do you have a quick question that we might add to your statement?
Be aware and watch this webinar. It's supposed to be posted on what the impact was in Arizona, because it's going to be bad.
So Patty, Jennifer, Scott, Bernard, anybody want to answer that, her issues that she raised?
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. I think this is another thing that unfortunately it's going to get brushed aside, where people think, well, that's never going to happen. Well, we said that about a lot of things that DeSantis has done. We never thought that DeSantis would try to take over Disney World either, did we? And I get it. I get that they still have their tax breaks, but he appointed one of the founders of Moms for Liberty to the board of Reedy Creek. So I think it's important for us to not let it go and for us to continue to educate our public and parents that this is a rhetoric, this is a talk, and even if it doesn't happen, it's not okay. It shouldn't even be happening in the first place.
And before we take our last question tonight, which will be from our president, Karen Houston, I'd like to ask if our panelists, Patty and Jennifer, Scott and Bernard, if you would have any action items that you would like to say very quickly. So think about those. We're going to take our last questions, then we're going to execute these action items and move along. So Karen Houston, our president, you have the floor. Please unmute yourself.
I have, Bill. Thank you. I had another comment coming up, and then I heard some more commentary, and I'm like, oh my God. But we don't have time for all that. But I just want to briefly say, since this is the last statement that came up about the discipline issues, and the sheriff's involvement was born out of desperation, and because there are teachers, IAs, staff that are that have had some situations that are really horrible. You shouldn't have to go to work and come back with your neck bruised because you choked and you got bruises all over your body. And I think that the sheriff took advantage of that situation. And you don't know where else to go. So that's what happened with that part. But I'm also familiar with the schools to prison pipeline and the concerns of a Black community, being a Black female myself and knowing some of the things that we've seen in our community in the past. So I just want to throw that out there. We got to find some kind of a middle ground there somehow. But finally, I just want to say this. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. That's what's the old analogy old people used to say. And basically, the squeaky wheel has been doing a lot of squeaking lately. And there's so many of us left over that just say, oh, that's a shame. Oh, what can we do? I just recently went to something, Dan McDowell was there. I saw some other people who were there. And the speaker was talking about, why are we so quiet? We have to say something. So if we don't get anything else from this right here tonight, all the bills that you heard about, call your representatives and your senators and let them know how you feel. Everything that you heard here tonight, you got to do something about it. It's not going to do us any good to come to this little church right here we call Space Coast Progressive Alliance and sing in the choir, but we don't go out and sing to our families and our friends in the neighborhood. So I'll just leave it at that because we're running over time and we need to get our action items. So thank you all for coming in. Thank you so very much for all this. This has been a wonderful program. So thank you all.
Yes, I would like to add an action.
Thank you,
and push for more parental engagement. And we've been sending out emails, communicating with parents, sharing with them really what the data is. So the action item is that we do what we can to educate all parents on what are the opportunities, what are the issues, so that everybody can be engaged. That's what we're pushing.
Thank you. Scott, do you have an action item for us tonight?
So messaging is critical, but the reality is this is going to keep happening until we win some more elections. So the action item would be check out our caucus. We have a program. I won't go into the full explanation. It's called Spectre. It's a specialized group of public education canvassers that we want in place for 24 so that we can knock doors for great school board candidates. And unfortunately, it's money. We're never going to have more than the other side, but we need to have money to give more platforms, more opportunities to our great candidates like Jennifer to get our message out.
And let's see, Jennifer, do you have an action item for us tonight?
Yeah, mine's going to be a little bit more specific to Brevard and personal, and somebody said it earlier. I would appreciate support with holding the other members accountable. And I don't mean just because you don't agree with something that they believe in. I don't mean that. But there have been many things that have been said and many things that have been done and proposed to be done that I often sometimes feel like I'm constantly fighting with my fellow board members because I feel this burden to be loud and proud about the things that are going wrong. But it would be nice for the public to finally hold them a little bit more accountable for those actions too, because they're not sneaky about it anymore. They do it right out there in the open. I don't know if it would change their mindset necessarily, but it definitely would temper down the flames a little bit if it was happening more often.
If people are aware that the citizens are paying attention, it changes their behavior. And that's true for all elected officials, isn't it?
And I have to give this one example as to why that's so important. Because I made a statement at our last board meeting that the leaders of the industries around us, the gigantic industries around us, without naming them, have made it very clear to me how disturbed they were when they fired our superintendent and when they had that video in front of a jail, and how they're struggling to bring new families to this area who are genuinely Googling our school system and will call back with questions about what the hell is going on with the discipline in the schools in your area. And my fellow board members' response was, well, I'm not getting those emails and I'm not getting those calls. And so there's this disillusion to the reality around them. And so I need support from our community as well as our businesses to stand up and say it out loud, because I can't be the only one saying it, because they genuinely don't believe that they've done anything wrong.
And the reminder, of course, is that there will be a protest that's coming up in front of the school board the next meeting. And I know we've already discussed that previously, so I won't go there again, but that's another thing that people can do. Patty Farley, you have the last action item, ma'am. What do you have as an action item for us tonight?
Well, I don't know if you're interested. I put my email in the chat. The organizations that I'm with, we send out alerts frequently that ask people, we tell you the bill, we tell you what's coming up, we tell you this is being heard, please call, and we give you the names and the phone number to call and tell them. A lot of times people don't like to engage. You can leave a message on a telephone. If you call at night, nobody's going to be in the office. You'll just get an answering machine. You can leave a message. Unfortunately, in this day and age, before a member of the legislature or Congress is going to even take notice, they may want 1,000 or 2,000 calls made into their office on a particular issue. And if you're one person making the call, that's one person. But we need engagement to make a difference. You can make the calls from your living room on your cell phone while you're standing in line somewhere. But please engage.
Patty, those are very powerful words. I know that the League of Women Voters every year publishes a directory of elected officials. The League of Women Voters website is just full of terrific information. And your email address, as I understand it, is P as in Patty Farley, FARLEY _101 at hotmail.com. So if anybody wants to email you directly, pfarley _101 at hotmail.com. This has been an absolutely spectacular night with fantastic panelists, surprise guests visiting us from Tallahassee, wonderful VIP guests, terrific questions from our audience. I want to thank all of you, and I'm going to ask everybody here to please come off mute. Let's give them a round of applause to say thank you. Thank you, Patty, Jennifer, Scott, Bernard, and of course, Anna Escamani. Thank you so much. Again, you would be surrounded with love and a standing ovation if we were in our normal venue. I would like to remind everybody of all these action items, and a quick reflection is to vote for people that support the schools, motivate parents to action, hold school board members accountable. And I guess the final thing from Patty was essentially contact your elected officials. Do it in whatever way is best for you, but writing a letter, sending an email, making those phone calls, keep at it, because it makes a difference. It really does make a difference. I'd like to remind everybody that the program must not end here. As we've said several times tonight, if we hang up tonight and we leave this event and don't contact our elected officials, talk to somebody who's a friend or a neighbor or a family member to tell them what they've learned here tonight, then we have failed. And I'd like to remind everybody that our next first Thursday program will be called Protecting Clean Water. That'll be Thursday, April 6th, 6:30 p.m., same time, same place. Please check out our website, www.scpaflorida.com. Thanks to everyone tonight. And I'm going to say good night to all of you. We'll look forward to seeing you next month. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
beautiful night.
Great. Thank you, Patty, Jennifer. Everybody was great, really.
Thank you.
Thank
Excellent
you.
meeting, everybody from
Yeah,
Stop Moms for Liberty.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank
people.
you.
It is
Amazing.
wonderful having you.
It was very informative. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Vicky, for getting everybody.
Indeed. Good night.
Absolutely.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.